I hope everyone is doing well this evening, enjoying this nice summer weather. If you're based in Algiers like I am, let me just get my chat up. All right, so tonight we are on the very last section of the 4 sections of the TOEFL exam. So if you're just joining us, which I don't know if we have any new faces, I see some names I recognize. We are going through in the 6-part master series, how to ace the TOEFL exam. So I am Ariella Knight, as you can see in a very nice professional photo, or me on Zoom where I always look slightly blue. One and the same person. I'm the founder and the CEO of American Institute in Algiers. I'm originally from Boston, and I am an English teacher myself, as well as now a business owner. And I've been living in Algiers and Algeria for 5 years. The overview of the course, we have it's funny, it says overview of the course, and then session 1 is called overview of the course, which maybe we should have separated the two. But we started, our very first class together was an overview of the TOEFL test. So what is the TOEFL? What are the different sections? Why should you take it? What are the benefits? What are the downsides? Then we've been going through every single element, every single section that they have on the TOEFL exam. We've done reading, we've done listening, we've done speaking, and tonight we're on the very last one, which is writing. Last but not least, tomorrow is going to be a recap. So recap is a session where we go over everything that we talked about, just the main points, the main takeaways that you need to know, as well as some other basic information around choosing between IELTS and TOEFL and time management strategies. So the course rules are to stay appropriate in the chat, stay on topic, and I hope participate actively. I'm happy. I feel like I have a real classroom with me. I was telling everyone last night, I might not know your faces if I see you in Algiers or in the school in American Institute, and you'll have to tell me, you know, Ariella, I was on Zoom with you. I spent my weekend with you learning all about TOEFL. So it's really been a pleasure having you in this virtual classroom, everyone. So tonight we're talking writing section. We're going to overview the section. Then we're going to go, just like we did last night, deep dive on the 2 tasks. There's only 2 writing tasks. We're going to talk about everything that you need to know for the integrated, which is the first task, and everything for the independent task. Then we'll talk about some tips and tricks, and we'll have Q&A. So I have an idea, which is I hope I can ask you to submit some writing responses, but knowing that you really should have a full 10 minutes to craft a beautiful response, and knowing that I have the tendency to not have extra time at the end, I happily fill an hour and a half talking with you guys about these different sections. We may not arrive to it, but I will extend the same offer as last night, which is that if anyone wants to submit a practice writing task to me, I'll put my email in the chat and you can send it to me and I will provide you some feedback. So if we get to it tonight, great. If we don't, and you still want to have a chance to send your writing task to me, absolutely, I'm more than happy to take a look at it. So what is the TOEFL writing section like? What are they going to be asking you to do? So in general, we have 30 minutes. Now I want you to note that 30 minutes is the writing time. There are other minutes allotted for reading or listening to exercises, but you have a total of 20 minutes where you are actively writing. I'm going like this because you can see my hand, but as we know, this is all about the TOEFL internet-based test, or IBT. So your writing will be on the computer. You have 20 minutes for the first task, 10 minutes for the second task. So they start you off on the long task, and then you end on the shorter one. So, you can see, let me go back to my slide. You can see that we're returning to the vocabulary that we used last night, which is about integrated tasks versus independent tasks. This is one of the elements that you should consider when you're looking at whether or not you want to do the TOEFL or the IELTS exam. The TOEFL exam loves this concept of integrating multiple competencies in a task. So what it generally comes down to is, for an integrated task, you are going to be listening to an audio and reading a written passage or some paragraphs and responding. So that's what I mean by multiple competency. So the first one will be an integrated task, summarizing points or contrasting, comparing points made in 2 different formats. The second one will be an independent task where you're just reading and writing. The IELTS for the writing tasks only has prompts that you read and that you write. There's no integration of listening. So what kinds of tasks? This is a summary of integrated versus independent, even though I kind of spoiled this slide already by just talking about this. Integrated tasks require combining multiple language skills. So audio, listening, and reading and writing, everything except for speaking in one task. An independent task focuses only on writing, but of course, there's also reading because you're reading the prompt, but really the emphasis is just on your ability to produce written language. Also, the independent tasks are always going to be about your personal opinion. You saw that last night in the speaking exam or the speaking section, and you'll see that tonight. So the independent tasks are not just, less chaos, kind of less, there's less sources, but also it's the one that's grounded in you, where you're using first person, I think, I believe, etc. The integrated tasks are always going to be about summarizing different ideas. All right, so we're going straight into it. Let's get started. The integrated task. This is number one. This is your 20-minute task. So there are 3 steps. Step number 1, you will read a passage. This is a passage that will typically be an academic topic, and you will be given 3 minutes to read. This is what it will look like. This is actually the passage we'll be using together, but I don't need you to read it right now. Later on, I'll have it in paragraphs and we can read it. But just so you have a visual sense, this is the amount of text that you will be looking at, and you will have 3 minutes to read this text. Rest assured, the text will remain in front of you while you do your writing task. So even if I'm saying you only have 3 minutes to read, it means it's gonna, the timer will give you 3 minutes to read first. Then you will listen. But when you go back to actually write, this passage will reappear. So you don't have to memorize it and you don't have to panic. However, it is still 3 minutes where you're just facing the reading passage, and you do need to grasp the main ideas before you listen to the audio. So your job when you are reading the passage is, number 1, to look for the main idea. Number 2, don't try to memorize information because the passage will be returning. Number 3, take down notes on the main idea and on the argument. When I say argument, I'm really talking about the supporting examples. So if the main idea is Algiers is a better city than Oran to live in, then there's going to be reasons. Why is it a better city than Oran? Typically what you'll find in the reading passages of TOEFL, there's always going to be 1 main idea and 3 supporting reasons. So in your 3 minutes, essentially what you want to do is you want to understand what's the main idea, which is always mentioned in the first paragraph, maybe even the first sentence. And then you want to take notes. What are the supporting reasons? This is very important because when you listen to the audio, you'll be hearing someone who's agreeing or disagreeing, and you need to remember which examples or which supporting evidence they are agreeing or disagreeing with. So, okay, so we're still in the same task, but we have, let me go back, we have read our passage. So 3 minutes have gone by. Now we are listening. Immediately, the screen of the TOEFL test, because you're on the computer-based version, will change into a lecture. The lecture, it's going to be a university professor lecturing his or her classroom, and the lecture will be about the same topic. However, the professor's opinion will not be exactly the same. So my example is Algiers is a better city to live in than Oran. I give 3 reasons. The professor that you're listening to maybe has the exact opposite opinion. Actually, Oran is a way better city than Algiers. Your job in the writing task is going to be to contrast the 2 arguments. So you need to remember what she is saying about why. What are her supporting arguments for why Oran is better? It's not often going to be so simple as one person picks option 1 and in the reading passage, and then in the listening, it's option 2, and they directly contrast. They'll make it trickier for you. So if we take my example again of Algiers and Oran, you can imagine the reading passage will say, okay, Algiers is a better city for living than Oran. And then the person who's speaking maybe says, in fact, Algiers and Oran are very similar cities. I don't believe there's a major difference. So it's not the obvious. It's not the obvious team Oran, team Algiers. It's one person picks team Algiers and the next person says there shouldn't be teams. And here's why. So you really need to be listening carefully and not making assumptions about how the listening passage will interact with the reading passage. It might surprise you the ways in which they will choose to address what was said in the reading passage. So you have a 2-minute listening passage, which, as we talked about during the listening section, 2 minutes can feel like a long time, and you will need to have your trusty notebook or scrap paper and pen or pencil with you to make sure you're jotting down the main ideas. So your job during this listening section is to take notes on the main idea and then listen for the points of agreeing or disagreeing. That's really the biggest piece that you need to write about, is where do they agree and why, and where do they disagree and why. That is what we're paying attention to. In an integrated task, it is the relationship between both. It's not simply summing up in a paraphrased sentence what the reading passage said and then paraphrasing what the listening excerpt was about. It's actually about showing you understood the relationship between the two of them. You will only hear the listening passage one time. There is no option to replay, to pause, nothing. It starts, you listen once, khalas, it finishes. When you complete the listening, so as soon as that 2 minutes is up, the reading passage, as we said, will reappear on the screen and it will remain on the screen while you write for 20 minutes. So if you're thinking about your note-taking in the integrated writing task, you're going to want to take more notes on the listening passage because you don't ever get to hear it again. So that's where you want to dedicate your time to making sure you don't forget what was stated. The reading passage is in front of you the whole time. So of course you can take some notes on it to gather your thoughts. You don't want to have to be reading in the time that you're supposed to be writing, but the listening one is the one that you won't have a chance to hear again. Step 3. So step 1 is the reading passage. Step 2 is the listening excerpt. Step 3, you write a response. So this response is saying what? It is summarizing and relating the reading and listening passages. And this is where you have 20 minutes. So if you remember at the beginning, I said that you have 30 minutes of writing time. So the majority of that writing time, 2/3 of it, is actually in this first task where you are given 20 minutes completely empty your time to sit and craft and write a response. So in this 20 minutes, your job is to summarize the main points in the lecture and contrast the points from the lecture with the reading passage. There is no maximum or minimum word count. So they are not asking for a minimum 200 words, a maximum 800 words. No, they really are looking at the content of what you produce. I think this should be reassuring because you don't have to force yourself to produce a lot of extra content or write 3, 4, 5 additional sentences out of stress. In some ways, it's exactly the opposite of the speaking section. In the speaking section, I said, don't let there be any empty space. Keep talking, as long as it's not just repeating and repeating yourself, but try to keep talking. However, in the written section, it's not keep writing. It's make sure that you write something that is, well, we'll go over the grading criteria in a second, but you'll see that they want to see it's organized, addresses the question, and has the appropriate use of language. So if you have a beautiful response and it's only 150 words, which is like 1-2 paragraphs, maybe, I'll show you what it looks like in a second. You could get top marks, and length has nothing to do with grade. So someone could do 150 words, someone else could do 500 words, because remember, there's no maximum. So you can go beyond 225 and you could both get the same score. Okay. I've been ignoring my chat. I see some things going on in here. Iran is better. Sarah's taking the TOEFL exam tomorrow. Good luck, Sarah. Yes, try to manage your panic. Panic will make you forget. It will block your access to language in your brain, but of course it's also only humans. So I like to tell people, try not to panic, but if you do panic, don't panic that you're panicking. It becomes a meta panic, a meta effect. I'm panicked. Now I'm panicked that I'm panicked. We're only human. Try to stay calm. If you don't stay calm, be kind to yourself. Focus on the task. Look for that flow. If anyone was here for the flow of the speaking task yesterday. Great. Okay, everyone. So this is a summary of the integrated task, and then we're actually going to look at an example together. So you have a 3-minute reading passage, a 2-minute listening lecture, and a 20-minute response. Success of this integrated writing task really depends on your ability to identify the main idea of the reading passage. You need to understand the main point. What is the main thing it is saying? So we are, I don't know if you guessed it, but if you did or if you didn't, guess what? We're reading together the example. So you are just going to have to put up with me reading aloud to you here. It's not that long, I promise. I think we have 4 paragraphs, but we're going to look through the entire prompt so that you understand exactly the level of the questions that you will get and how the listening and the written interact with each other. I will say that after we read this together, we're going to go to the ETS website and listen to some audio, but they don't give us the whole audio in the practice test. However, I think it still gives you a really good idea of what you'll be up against. So let's go ahead and read. Remember, we are focusing on how do we identify the main and the supporting ideas. First is the main idea we need to know, and then we focus on supporting. So this first paragraph, critics say that current voting systems used in the United States are inefficient and often lead to the inaccurate counting of votes. Miscounts can be especially damaging if an election is closely contested. These critics would like the traditional system to be replaced with far more efficient and trustworthy computerized voting systems. I want you to tell me in the chat, I want you to write to me, what is the main idea? We've only read 1 paragraph, but I promise you the main idea of the entire essay is in this paragraph. What is, in your opinion, the main idea of the reading passage? I'm going to give you a few minutes to read again, think about it, and send me something. What is the main idea? So Mahdi, you're saying the current voting system. That's something they're talking about, but what's the idea? Mesa says the first sentence. Okay, critics say that current voting systems used in the United States are inefficient and lead to the inaccurate counting of votes. Yeah, it's basically the first sentence with a little bit of extra. Voting system inefficiency. Vote systems. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm seeing, yeah, Salah saying the ineffectiveness of the voting system in the US. Sarah, traditional voting systems should be replaced by computerized systems. So Sarah's going a little bit in the direction I was going in, which is the main idea is that the voting system in the US is inefficient and some people want to replace it with computerized voting. That's how I would put it. I would connect these two. I would say some people want to replace it with computerized voting, but the first kind of general main idea is simply that there are problems, there are issues with the voting system in the United States. Great. Let's read the supporting ideas. In traditional voting, one major source of inaccuracy is that people accidentally vote for the wrong candidate. Voters usually have to find the name of their candidate on a large sheet of paper containing many names, the ballot, and make a small mark next to that name. People with poor eyesight can easily mark the wrong name. The computerized voting machines have an easy-to-use touchscreen technology to cast a vote. A voter needs only to touch the candidate's name on the screen to record a vote for that candidate. Voters can even have the computer magnify the name for easier viewing. Okay, this is one supporting idea. So if the main idea is that the current US voting system is inefficient and could be replaced by computers, this is the first argument. What are they saying? What is the supporting argument for why it's inefficient and computers would be more efficient? Give me one sentence about why this is, what is the supporting argument? Okay, ISEM says to minimize the effort for people to help them choose the right person. So Ramesa, you're telling me the supporting sentence is directly following the main idea. I want you to tell me, essentially, I want you to summarize this paragraph into one point. If you're looking at an outline, the outline is US voting systems are inefficient and could be replaced by computerized ones. This is the first point. This whole paragraph is the first point. What do they choose to emphasize? What is the inefficiency they focus on? So Maria's telling me paper votes present obstacles. What is the specific obstacle this paragraph talks about? Sarah, computers are more accurate and error-free. I hear you. That's the main idea, the overall concept. But this paragraph, what is it talking about? It is actually talking, I think Salah is close and ISEM is close. So it is the accidentally choosing the wrong candidate. The first supporting argument is that in traditional voting methods, it's more common that people accidentally vote for the wrong candidate. Choosing the wrong person. That's example number one. Very good. That the voting system is inefficient on paper. Why? Number one, people more often accidentally choose the wrong candidate. Great. Here we are for supporting idea number two. Another major problem with old voting systems is that they rely heavily on people to count the votes. Officials must often count up the votes one by one, going through every ballot and recording the vote. Since they have to deal with thousands of ballots, it is almost inevitable that they will make mistakes. If an error is detected, a long and expensive recount has to take place. In contrast, computerized systems remove the possibility of human error, since all the vote counting is done quickly and automatically by the computers. Take another minute and then tell me, what is this paragraph? What is the main supporting idea? So the last paragraph, the main supporting idea is people choose the wrong candidate more with traditional voting. What is the main supporting idea in this one? So I'm seeing people saying it's saving money. Okay, I wouldn't say that's the main idea. The argument we're making is that the US voting system is inefficient. Number one, we saw because people choose the wrong candidates. Why else is it inefficient? Why else is it inefficient from this paragraph? Thank you, Afra. Counting. This paragraph is about vote counting. So the last paragraph was about people choosing the wrong candidate. And with a computerized system, it would be less likely to happen. The next supporting argument is people make a lot of mistakes when counting votes for various reasons, and that counting votes on a computer would have less errors. So I see that, when you are sending me something like computers save time, computers save money, that's true. They are mentioning that. But the main piece of evidence that this paragraph is providing us is to support the general idea that traditional is inefficient and it's all about vote counting. This is what I want you to work on before you go into the written section of the TOEFL. I need to see, or for a high score, the TOEFL test really relies on your ability to see what is the main idea and what are the three supporting arguments. They keep this rather traditional basic format in the TOEFL. One main idea, three supporting arguments. So we have traditional voting, people pick the wrong candidate more. And then we have traditional voting, we have more errors in vote counting. All right. Last paragraph. Finally, some people say it is too risky to implement complicated voting technology nationwide. But without giving it a thought, governments and individuals alike trust other complex computer technology every day to be perfectly accurate in banking transactions, as well as in the communication of highly sensitive information. Let me make sure this is 1, 2, 3. I want to make sure. Sorry if you're reading it. In traditional voting. Beautiful. So we have 4 paragraphs. Our main idea, our first paragraph with a supporting idea, our second paragraph with a supporting idea. Okay, we've arrived at our third. Some people say it is too risky to implement complicated voting technology nationwide. But without giving it a thought, governments and individuals alike trust other complex computer technology every day to be perfectly accurate in banking transactions, as well as in the communication of highly sensitive information. What is the main point of this paragraph? What is the main point? It's interesting because the first two paragraphs are supporting the idea that the traditional system is inefficient. And this one is really more closely supporting the idea that computerized systems are more efficient. Okay, the theme is trusting technology, right? What's the argument? What's the case that they're making? They're making a relationship between the fact that people trust technology for banking operations and voting. Okay? What's the connection between trusting technology and computerized voting? Who can help me understand the connection? I'm going to give one more minute. You can see it's this is the hardest one because it starts to address the second clause of our main point, which is really about supporting computerized voting. So Reem is saying governments don't trust technology in the voting system yet. Okay. This is a fact. I mean, he doesn't actually say, or the author doesn't actually say governments. The author says some people say, but it's true that there's an idea that there's a lack of trust. Remember, the main point of this article is not why do people not like computerized voting. The main point is traditional voting is inefficient and computerized voting is more efficient. So the case they're making here, Salah, I think you started it, saying since the government and individuals use technology even for sensitive information, I don't know if you're still typing the second half of that clause, but I'm going to complete it for you, which is to say there's no reason computerized voting should be considered risky. This is the point of the third paragraph. This is the supporting idea. If we can trust computers with our online banking or highly sensitive information, meaning, let's say we email, the president of a country uses email to communicate with his or her team. That's very highly sensitive information. We're putting it on a computer. We don't handwrite notes anymore. So this is the case that this is making. They're saying we already are using computerized systems for operations that are very sensitive. So there's no logical reason why we should consider voting too sensitive. Good. All right, so that first case that we went through together, this is to help you identify the main idea of the reading passage and the supporting ideas. There's always one main concept and then three supporting pieces of evidence. Then we're now going to go and listen. And as I said, it's not the full 2-minute listening, but it's enough for you to understand what the listening is, how the speaker in the listening excerpt is going to respond. So number 2 for how to succeed in the integrated writing task, the biggest piece of your success here depends on your ability to notice, to analyze, to interpret the position of the speaker as it relates to the reading passage. So what examples, when we listen, we're going to listen to what the speaker says and try to understand what examples she uses to support her point. Let me just make sure I have this up and loaded. And even as I'm highlighting certain elements of the passage we're reading, I'm asking you to analyze the writing with me in an academic sense, to decipher it, etc. You could also be taking away some other interesting and relevant points. Notably, it's about the US. This is a test developed by an American company. So it is common that the questions will be topically about something relevant to the US or something specific to the US. And you can also take a moment to notice and think about the type of language they use or how difficult it is, how easy it is. This is exactly like what we're working with today as a practice question, shows you what you can expect on the day of the test. We have our same fun guy back that the ETS company loves to put in all of their prep videos. Again, if you haven't seen this yet, take a look at this URL here, and I'll even put this in the chat for you so you can look at this example later. I took this entire practice example from the ETS website. Why? Because they are the ones who make the test. Especially because the test went through a huge overhaul last year. A lot of the online testing materials are out of date. They're not completely useless, but they don't reflect the latest version of the test, which was greatly reduced in terms of length. They made it much shorter. So when you are doing your practice for the exam, I really recommend that you go to the official testing website to get the most up-to-date practice materials. All right. Let's see if we can hear this. This is going to be this is the listening part of the first writing task.
Indicate his or her perspective near the beginning of the lecture. So be sure
to I have him on 1.5 speed. We don't want that. We want normal speed. If you don't know that this exists, which I think everyone here probably knows this exists because you're probably more on YouTube than me. I know that Algeria has a lot of famous YouTubers to watch. You can slow the speed down or speed up. So we'll go to normal speed and see what we have here.
Carefully. In this case, it's clear that the speaker opposes a change to electronic voting. It's doubtful that perspective.
Let me start over.
In the listening passage, here. The speaker is going to indicate his or her perspective near the beginning of the lecture. So be sure to listen carefully.
To emphasize what he just said, in the listening passage, the speaker will say his or her perspective immediately. Similar to how the main idea in the reading passage is in the first paragraph or the first sentence, the main idea in the listening section, it comes out right away. So TOEFL is not giving you implicit language. They're not hiding the main idea. They are telling you immediately, whether it's reading, whether it's listening, what the main idea is.
In this case, it's clear that the speaker opposes a change to electronic voting. It's doubtful that computerized voting will make the situation any better. Then, when you're taking notes during the listening passage.
So we have the woman saying, it's doubtful that computerized voting would make the situation any better. So the word that this gentleman chose when he's describing the relationship is he says, the speaker opposes. She opposes computerized voting. So now you know from immediately, well, from him in this case, but even from her, when she starts her speech or her lecture by saying it's doubtful that this will work. It's doubtful. She doesn't believe that computerized voting will work. We know that we immediately have a contrast. The reading passage is telling us why computerized voting will solve some of the biggest issues in the US voting system. Immediately, as soon as she starts talking, we can hear, no, she does not believe it. She's disagreeing. Exactly, Reem. She's disagreeing with the perspective in the reading passage. And it is your job while you are listening to note down why she disagrees. What are the reasons she states for disagreeing?
Remember that you're looking for specific points that relate to the points in the reading.
This guy is my co-teacher now. I say it, then he says it. I should find out his name at some point.
These voters can easily cast the wrong vote or be discouraged from voting altogether because.
Okay, so what you're seeing now is on the left, the actual screen that you'll have in front of you in the TOEFL exam. On the right, this is a suggestion of what your notes can say. So this will not actually, on the right side, those words, the sentence that begins, people not familiar with computers, that will not be generated while you're listening. I want to be very clear on that point. It would be amazing if TOEFL didn't. Oh, I'm sorry. That's my dog who just scared me by barking. Excuse me. She's normally very quiet and very calm, and I don't know what has disturbed her, but she made me jump. Back to what I was saying. I know if it's not an electricity failure, it's the dog in the room. I have to tell you, it's a very active teaching environment here in the house. Back to what I'm saying. When you are doing the listening section, nothing written is on the screen. But what the TOEFL ETS website is showing you is the value of your own notes. So while we're listening, they're suggesting that this is the note you could write. And since I shocked myself and was shocked, I need to re-listen again to what she said. So let's go back and hear it one more time.
Relate to the points in the reading.
Machines. These voters can easily cast the wrong vote or be discouraged from voting altogether because
she said these voters can easily cast the wrong vote or be discouraged from voting altogether. So you can look on the screen, you see this bar underneath the image. This is the I want to call it the timekeeper, even though there's no time. As it fills green, it shows us how long we are into the listening. So what you'll notice is that we didn't start from the beginning. The ETS practice test that they're letting us take, they're not giving us the full audio. So when you see this note and you say to yourself, but Ariella, I wouldn't have written that note, we didn't hear enough. You're right, we didn't hear enough to fully get the context. But we know because ETS is showing us, and we heard a little clip, that essentially her first point, why she doesn't believe computerized voting will be successful. Her first point is that there are people who aren't familiar with computers. So even though we might say, oh, computers are everywhere and people are really comfortable with them, she's actually saying, as a matter of fact, and she's right, there are a lot of Americans who live in really rural communities who are using phones that, you know, we call them flip phones. They don't have internet, they don't have Wi-Fi, et cetera, and that they may feel excluded by computerized voting. So the note that I think our sort of fake test taker has written here is that people not familiar with computers can vote incorrectly or vote not at all if they're afraid of them. Afraid of what? Afraid of the computers. So that's the first point.
because of fear of technology. Furthermore, it's true that humans make mistakes when they count up ballots by hand. But are we sure that computers will do a better job? After all, computers are programmed by humans, so human error can show up in mistakes in their programs. And in
So this next point, she's actually directly addressing something from the reading passage. She is saying, you know, while some people say that human vote counting causes a lot of errors, computers can also have vote counting errors. She makes a funny remark saying, if we think humans are error prone and humans make computers, why wouldn't the computers also have errors? Which I think those, you know, those of you who've done computer science may think that's not a very good line of argument. And there's coding and there's other tools. But the most important thing is that you understand her point. And the note here on the right, computers can also make mistakes counting votes if programmed poorly. Sarah, I see your question or your point saying basically the listening always casts doubt on the points raised in the reading. I don't want to say always because it might not always be doubt, but you are correct to say that they will be contrasted with each other. Either they disagree or they're doubtful or they, I guess that would be it. Disagree or doubtful. I'm going to say present conflicting viewpoints. There will be an interaction, and it will not be two people who have the same idea who agree with each other. So you can be sure of that. You're not going to get agreement. You're always going to get something that's a little bit of a disagreement or a complete and full disagreement. Like this woman, you know, she's saying, oh, I'm doubtful, but this is a disagreement. She's disagreeing with the reasons that we just saw in the reading passage. This is exactly what you will get in the integrated writing task. And they want to make sure that you're able to explain why they didn't agree. What does the speaker say that doesn't agree with what was in the reading? Noor's question, is there a spot to take notes on the computer? No, you are only taking notes by hand. So what you see here, this kind of typed notes, this is just for the sake of the practice exam. In the real experience, you're going to be writing your notes with pen and paper. All right, let's see if they do the third.
Systems, there is no physical record.
Hold on. Let me go back. We'll hear the last 2 points again so we can hear one more time.
Furthermore, it's true that humans make mistakes when they count up ballots by hand. But are we sure that computers will do a better job? After all, computers are programmed by humans, so human error can show up in mistakes in their programs. And in many voting systems, there is no physical record of the votes, so a computer recount in the case of a suspected error is impossible. As for our trust of computer technology for banking and communications, remember one thing. These systems are used daily and they are used heavily. But voting happens only once every 2 years nationally in the United States, and not much more than twice a year in many local areas. This is hardly sufficient for us to develop confidence that computerized voting can be fully trusted.
All right.
In this example,
Oops.
the speaker makes.
Great. So actually, we have a total of 4 supporting arguments made by the lecturer. We have the first one: people not familiar with computers can vote incorrectly or not at all if they're afraid of them. Computers can also make mistakes counting votes if programmed poorly. Computer voting systems don't have written records that can be checked. And computers for banking are used every day, while voting machines are used only once or twice a year. I want you to tell me, remember to the exercise that we just did when we were reading, which points is she disproving? Which points is she disagreeing with? If you remember, when we went back to the reading, we had the point about people marking the wrong candidate, so making mistakes, choosing the wrong candidate when they vote. We had the point about vote counting, a lot of human error in vote counting. And we had the point about we trust computers to do our banking. Why wouldn't we trust them to do our voting? So tell me, for the case of people not familiar with computers can vote incorrectly or not at all if they're afraid of them, what is she arguing against? Which specific point in the reading passage is she arguing? Yeah, Nora, you're noticing that she addresses all the previous supporting details. That's exactly what I want you to notice. So which one is her first point? Which one is it addressing? People not familiar with computers can vote incorrectly or not at all. Is that about the banking system? Is that about people picking the wrong candidate? Is that about vote counting errors? Which specific point is she disagreeing with? Trusting computers as a method of voting, says Mehdi. Okay. So I think it's a little bit hard because I want to go back to my slides and show you exactly the part. Maybe I will do that. The main point I want to make here, which Nora already pointed out, is that every single piece of supporting evidence in the reading passage was addressed in the listening. So let's start at the beginning. This is the one we're talking about. The very first point she makes, which is that people not familiar with computers can vote incorrectly. That is a direct response to this first supporting argument. This first supporting argument, which says that people accidentally vote for the wrong candidate, and that if they had a computer, they wouldn't make any mistakes. This is the very first point that the reading passage addresses. With a computer, people will make less mistakes. And what does our wonderful university lecturer say? She says, actually, people not familiar with computers will also still make mistakes. So the point in the reading came with a point in the listening. Zineb, good. Computers can make mistakes too. Yep, computer unfamiliarity. So she directly addresses that point. We have 2 more points. Computers can make mistakes counting votes, and also computer voting systems don't have written records. These are both addressing the second main point in the article, which is about vote counting. If you remember this paragraph, another major problem with old voting systems is they rely heavily on people to count votes. The reading passage said computers will do a better job counting votes than humans. And the lecturer, the listening passage said, I'm not sure. They can have bad programming and sometimes they don't keep records. So we don't know. They're saying there's 100 votes for candidate A, but there's no proof. So she raises 2 points to refute the vote counting. And then we have her last point, which is computers for banking are used every day and voting machines are used only once or twice a year. This is directly contrasting. I don't know if you're dizzy yet, going between the two. This is directly contrasting the reading section, which says there's no reason we shouldn't computerize voting because we computerize everything else. The university professor says, hey, actually, these are rien à faire with each other. They have nothing to do with each other. Banking, we use it every day. If there's an issue, we notice it. There's a lot of users. There's a lot of people signaling problems. With voting machines, there's only one shot. There's one day to vote or maybe one period of time to vote. You won't be able to go back and redo it and fix an error. The stakes are different. The conditions are different. So the reason I'm making you dizzy by going back and forth is to show you that the reading passage and the listening passage, it's almost like a copie-coller. What you find in the reading passage, you will hear addressed, but you have to be paying attention. They will not use the same words. They will use synonyms. They will paraphrase. Maybe the listening, in this case, the listening passage, she presented 2 counterpoints for the reading section, which only had one. This is about vote counting. There was just one paragraph on vote counting. In the listening, we have actually 2 different arguments about vote counting. So you will be responsible for mapping what the listening excerpt is saying and what is it exactly speaking to in the reading passage. A few things that are nice about this, if you're thinking like, wow, that's challenging, and how am I going to do that? And I only get to listen once, and I'm supposed to be doing all of these things. Number one, yes, and it will be challenging, and welcome to the world of standardized tests where they want to grill you. But number 2, there's a few things you can be sure of. The main idea will be stated in the beginning of the reading passage and the beginning of the listening section. Amazing. So you don't have to do any searching. You hear it or you read it right away. Number 2, the order of the supporting evidence is actually the same. They're organizing it for you. So the order of the reading cases where we had voting for the wrong people, human error voter counting, and the whole thing about we should trust computers for voting. The lecturer spoke to those points in the same order. The logical flow was followed on both. So yes, it is challenging. The conditions are tough. It's I think probably the hardest section on the TOEFL is this one, is the writing section for this reason. But there are little ways that you're getting help. So this is why you're in this class with me today, or maybe someone's watching this on YouTube later, to know these tips and tricks, to be able to map the examples very quickly. Nora, I see your question, which is, will we be able to go to the passage in real life? No, not in the middle of the listening section. So if we go back, I'm going to stop sharing now. I think we're done with the listening section. So we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. And I'm going to remind you exactly how the flow of this task goes on my slide with all 3 sections. You have the reading passage in front of you for 3 minutes, and you can take notes. When the 3-minute mark goes up, boom, it instantly goes into the listening passage. You can take notes. At no time can you change what is in front of you on the screen. You can't speed up to the listening. You can't go back to the reading. However, once the listening section ends after 2 minutes and you start writing, the reading passage will reappear. And the whole time you are writing, you will have it within your eyesight and you can look at it. So the reading passage is your friend. It will be with you the entire time you're writing. The listening lecture is the one that will, you'll have 2 minutes with it and you won't be able to replay. But what I just showed you, that sort of toggling back and forth, you won't be able to do that in real life. Mehdi said, yeah, the same order, exactly. Hisham, this example is a bit hard. Well, the TOEFL exam is a bit hard. These examples are exactly the level that you will find in the actual exam, which is why you need to prepare. You can imagine that someone, even with a very high level of English, if they weren't ready for the TOEFL exam, they didn't know there was going to be a reading and then a listening, that you could really fail the exam, even with a good level of English, just by not taking notes. And so then you didn't remember the point. And I emphasize this every time with you guys, and I hope you'll carry the message on to others who are studying for standardized tests. But to do well on a standardized test, you have to study for the test, the format of the test, not just English. Cool. So let's talk about how you get a good score. So what is the grading criteria to get a good score on this first written task? Number one, you need to have relevant and clearly developed ideas. This means you have to select the most important information from the listening. This is where your note taking is going to be key. You need to pull the main ideas and the main examples that you bring up. You need to connect what you hear in the listening section to the relevant points in the reading passage. That's what we just did together. We took a point from the listening and we connected it to the relevant point in the reading. An exact connection. Paragraph 2 connected with point 2 and point 3 in the listening. All right, that is the level of connection they want to see, not just an overall discussion of why she disagrees, but a connection. Whereas the reading passage says that there's a lot of human error in counting votes, the lecturer believes that computers can be programmed poorly and would also have human error. Okay, you're not just listing the points, you're connecting them together. Then we have clear organization. You are going, these are the grading criteria. You are going to be graded on how clearly organized it is. So you need to write in paragraph format. You cannot just write one block. You need to write in paragraphs, and your paragraphs should discuss different points. Paragraph 1 should be about one thing. Paragraph 2 about something different. Paragraph 3 about a third different thing. These paragraphs are not just having a space between them. They actually should have different content so that you don't just talk about the same content in every paragraph. You need to have transitions between different ideas. So this is, you know, the simplest way to do this is to have strong transition language. Another interesting point is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So by saying another, I'm highlighting a transition. In addition to, furthermore, beyond this, but more than just using transition words, it's also the ability that you have to organize your writing so that the transition between ideas is logical and the test rater, the person who's scoring your essays, is able to follow your logic. Also, clear organization is that you don't repeat yourself, that you are not saying the same thing 3 or 4 times over. Sarah, I see your question. Is it true the essay should include more information from the listening than from the reading? And Noor saying, so we are reporting what was stated. So actually, you know what? I realized I should have shown you the prompt before we got here. So the actual prompt, let's go back. What will you be writing? You will be writing a summary about the listening lecture and why the listening agrees or disagrees with the writing. So it is true that you are writing primarily about the listening part, but you are connecting it with the written passage. So I didn't copy and paste the exact prompt, so let me find it for you here so that there is no confusion. We're going to go back in. And then I have an example for you. So it should be very clear in a second when you see the example of someone who got a 5 out of 5. So if you look here in question, this is the prompt. Question, summarize the points made in the lecture, being sure to explain how they oppose specific points made in the reading passage. Now, for those of you who are coming from a French language background, be careful with the word lecture. Lecture is, in English, something that is spoken. So they want you to summarize the points that are spoken. So what Sarah said is completely correct. You are not summarizing the reading and the listening. You are summarizing the listening and explaining how the listening part opposes the reading passage. You are doing this from the perspective of the listening part. What did the university professor say, and how did it relate to the reading passage? I hope that makes sense. Let's go. We're going to finish the grading criteria. There's just one more. And then we're going to look at a successful 5 out of 5, which is top marks. answer to this question. And hopefully that gives you an idea of what they're looking for. So for grading criteria, we already went over relevant and clearly developed ideas. Next, we have clear organization. And then the last one is, correct use of language. So that's coherent sentence structure and word order, correct grammar use, and correct word choice and vocabulary. However, I want to be very clear here that the grammar does not have to be perfect to get a top score. You can't have tons of grammar problems, but if you hit all of the other points, your organization is clear, your transitions are good, you've addressed the question, you clearly understood the lecture and the reading passage, but you have a few grammar issues, you could still get a top score. So a misconception about the written part of the TOEFL is that it's just about having perfectly written English. That's not it. It has to fully understand, it has to show a full understanding of both the reading and the listening, and demonstrate that you have the ability to craft, like I would say, an argumentative piece where you can summarize and make a point in English, even if you have a few typos, a few punctuation errors, maybe a missed tense here and there. So these are the three criteria: relevant and clearly developed, clear organization, relevant and clearly developed ideas, clear organization, correct use of language. This is what a 5 out of 5 response looks like. I'm also showing you this so you can see for length. This is not the full length. Okay, so it's split into 3 so that you can read it. I thought I had a zoomed out one, but this is 275 words. So this is on the longer end of what they're asking for, because if you remember, while there's no minimum and no maximum, they really say the most effective answers are between 150 to 225 words. So this one is 275 words. It's a little bit longer, but it's fine. It's a good response for them. So let's read it. The lecture explained why the computerized voting system cannot replace the traditional voting system. These are the following 3 reasons. I give it a chef's kiss. Why? Because it's extremely clear. Written English is about clarity. There are no fancy adjectives. We don't have long sentences. We have short, direct sentences. It sounds dry. It sounds like a medical textbook. That's how we like to write in English. It does not need to sound beautiful. It needs to be clear. So the first sentence of this answer is simply stating the main idea in the listening section. The lecture explained why the computerized voting system cannot replace the traditional voting system, period. That's the main idea that this person got from the lecture. And then this person says, there are the following 3 reasons. Great. That's a perfect way to organize your essay. You're going to list 3 reasons. You say, here are 3 reasons. You don't need to have fancy language here at all. Okay, so he said, oops, first one is on this page. First of all, not everyone can use computers correctly. Some people do not have access to computers. Some people are not used to computers. Some people are not used of computers. I'm going to come back to this. And some people are even scared of this new technology. If the voters do not know how to use a computer, how do you expect them to finish the voting process through computers? This directly refutes the reading passage, which states that computerized voting is easier by just touching the screen. So you can see that he or she chooses for their first case, they're following the logical flow of both the reading and the listening. Everyone in the beginning is talking about the ease of use and which one has more mistakes. This person is saying exactly what the university professor said, but in their own words. They are paraphrasing. And then they mention what was said in the reading passage. So the first 2-3 sentences are about what the university professor said, and then they connect it to the reading passage when they say this directly refutes the reading passage. What does it mean, refute? Who can give me a synonym or an explanation of refute? Because this is a nice word. This is a nice word for this task. Noor says opposes. Beautiful. Opposes, disagrees. Thank you, Maria. Runs against. Thank you, Sarah. Perfect. But if you had replaced refutes with any of those words, this directly opposes, this directly disagrees with, this directly runs against, you would still get 5 out of 5. Okay, it's not about fancy vocabulary, it's about clarity of ideas and that you demonstrate comprehension. So this paragraph is beautiful. It talks about the listening and then it addresses the reading. So Sarah, you're right, because you can see that 3 sentences, 1, 2, 3 sentences are about the listening. The last sentence is about the reading. So the larger amount of time is dedicated to the listening. Number 2. Secondly, computers may make mistakes as the people do, as computers are programmed by the human beings. Thus, errors are inevitable in the computer system. Problems caused by computer voting systems may be more serious than those caused by people. A larger number of votes might be miscounted or even removed from the system. Furthermore, it would take more energy to recount the votes. Again, this contradicts what is stated in the reading, which stated that only people will make mistakes in counting. So we have the exact same thing. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences where this person is summarizing what the university professor said. Because remember, that is the first task. Summarize what you heard. Then he or she connects it with the reading passage in the last sentence. This contradicts what is stated in the reading. It's beautiful. Thirdly, computerized voting system is not reliable because it has not reached a stable status. People trust computers to conduct banking transactions because the computerized banking system is being used daily and frequently and has been stable. However, the voting does not happen as often as banking, thus the computerized voting system has not been proved to be totally reliable. All right, the same thing. We are having a discussion about what the lecturer said and how it contradicts with the reading passage. And then we have a conclusion. All in all, not everyone can use a computer properly. Computer caused mistakes and computerized voting system is not reliable are the main reasons why computerized voting system cannot replace traditional voter system. So in this final paragraph, the author is summarizing the 4 points that the lecturer makes. Think about the notes. There are 4 points in the notes on the side of the listening piece, and he summarizes them. 1, not everyone can use a computer properly. 2, computers can cause mistakes. 3, computerized voting systems aren't reliable. And this is the main reason why they cannot replace the traditional voting system. I would have liked to see him also bring back the point on banking, but he chose not to. So I was going to ask what you noticed, but Noor beat me to it, which is when Noor said there are spelling mistakes. There are more than just spelling mistakes here. There are grammar mistakes. There are run-on sentences. We have the word frequently spelled with a C instead of a Q. We have some people are not used of computers instead of used to computers. These are English mistakes. They are wrong. It is incorrect. However, this comes back to my point on the grading. Your grammar doesn't have to be perfect to get a top score. They care more about clearly developed ideas that show a clear understanding of the listening and the reading section than they care about grammar. So this example you're looking at is a real example that someone submitted and they scored 5 out of 5. I hope that emphasizes the point here that you want to focus more on your comprehension of reading passages and listening for main ideas so that you can write about them more than you want to just practice and drill on punctuation, for example. All right, we have to move on. This whole thing that we just talked about is the first task. That's 20 minutes of your writing time. It's the more elaborate one. It's the only integrated one that you're bringing audio in. But let's move now to the independent task. So the independent task is where you are actually putting your own opinion in what you submit. And the scenario that TOEFL has chosen is the same for everyone, which is that you are contributing to an online academic discussion. Online, like in a chat. So I don't know if anyone here has used Google Classroom or Canva, no, not Canva, Canvas. There are these websites where you and your professor and all your classmates will be online together, and your professor can send a homework assignment and all the students comment, and your homework or your contribution is to add your own comment. So that's what this second writing task is recreating. This screen, we'll read it together in a second, but I just want to show you this is what it will look like on the TOEFL test. You will have a screen that looks like this with images, with names, really showing you the online discussion. So they're putting you right in the vibe of being in an online classroom. So this is the scenario. A professor, your professor in this fake scenario, has posted a question. Other students have already written responses. So let's go back here. You see the professor on the left with text underneath. That is the question. Then on the right, we have Paul N., who has submitted an answer. That's one student. We have Lena A., who has submitted a second answer. And then we have a text box underneath for your answer. So you are going to be the third person building into the discussion. So a professor has posted a question, other students have written responses. Now it's up to you to write another response to contribute to the discussion. So you are contributing your opinion, but you must support your opinion with specific examples. Both of the writing tasks are very heavy on examples. Do not just state what you think, what you feel, or put forth a concept. You have to provide examples for why you believe this to be, I don't know, the appropriate answer to the question, why. If you're struggling to know, did I put examples or not? See if you've answered the question, why. Okay, so this is the best invention. You'll see this example is about inventions, and you need to show why, not just what is the best, but why is it the best? That's when you'll be sure that you've submitted examples. So here is a zoom in of what you read a second ago. So you will have instructions on the screen in front of you, but the more you're prepared for them, the faster you can read through them on the actual test day. So the instructions, your professor is teaching a class on economics. Write a post responding to the professor's question. In your response, you should express and support your personal opinion and make a contribution to the discussion. An effective response will contain at least 100 words. We have the professor. This is the question he asks. When people are asked about the most important discoveries or inventions made in the last 200 years, they usually mention something very obvious, like the computer or the cell phone. But there are thousands of other discoveries or inventions that have had a huge impact on how we live today. What scientific discovery or technological invention from the last 200 years, other than computers and cell phones, would you choose as being important and why? All right, take another second to read through it. Let's make sure we're all on the same page about what the prompt is from our fake Professor Henson. Noelle is sad that this test is hard. The TOEFL is hard, everyone. It is hard because it's one test for all levels. So it needs to be hard for an advanced English speaker, and it needs to be hard for an advanced beginner English speaker to really figure out where your English level is. All right, so generally, if I had to summarize this, the prompt is about technological inventions. What would you choose, in your opinion, as yourself? Me as Ariella, what would I choose? You as Noelle, you as Samah, what would you choose? So then you have a few ideas to get you going. And it's really nice that TOEFL gives you these other students, I put between quotes, to show you exactly what they're looking for. So Paul says, I mean, we're so used to science and technology that we're not even aware of all the things we use in our daily lives. I would probably choose space satellites. This technology happened in the last 100 years, and it has become important for so many things. Just think about navigation or telecommunications or even the military. So Paul N., this example is not meant to show you what a perfect example looks like, but it's there to help get your ideas generated. Lena, I am thinking about medical progress. Like, for example, when scientists discovered things about healthy nutrition, I am thinking of identifying all the vitamins we need to stay healthy. I'm not sure exactly when the vitamin discoveries happened, but I know they're very important. Our health is much better than it was 200 years ago. So when you are getting started, before you start writing, this is all the information that you will have seen. I'm going to go back to this slide so you see exactly what it will look like in front of you. Instructions, prompt from the professor, and then 2 answers from 2 fake students. Then you can start writing or typing, and you will have a word count to show you how many words you're writing. All right, I see that this one is starting to stress folks out. This one you have 10 minutes for. To have a successful answer for this question, you need to, number 1, introduce the invention you chose. That step should be obvious. Everyone I can see is already thinking about it. What is the invention you pick? Number 2, you can reference if you agree or disagree with the inventions the other students wrote about, but don't copy and paste. Don't use what they said. Don't use the exact sentence. You will really lose points for that. So make sure you rephrase. So for example, if we're looking at Lena said vitamins. You can say, well, I agree that vitamins are important, comma, I want to mention X, Y, and Z. So don't be afraid to interact with what the other students, fake students have said, but don't copy and paste any of the actual text. Then you need to explain or justify the question, why? So I've been seeing people say electricity. Why? Why is that important? Right? Let's go back to our professor question. He said, what scientific discovery or technological invention from the last 200 years, other than computers and cell phones, would you choose as being important and why? That's the exact question that we have to answer. So Hisham is saying we have to not choose the same innovation. Yes, Hisham, choose a different one. Don't repeat what the fake students say. So don't choose space satellites. Don't choose vitamins or healthy nutrition. Pick a different invention, just like you would if you were in a classroom. If someone raised their hand and already contributed space satellites, you wouldn't also raise your hand and say the same thing. Pick a new invention and list why you picked it. So there is no maximum or minimum word count, but there is a recommendation to have 100 words at a minimum. You have 10 minutes total to write. This is the grading criteria, and then we'll look at an accurate or a 5 out of 5 example. So it's very similar to the previous one. We need relevant and clearly developed ideas. We need to see that you contribute to the discussion. You're not writing something completely different, left field, unrelated. No, we need to see that you are writing, I'm back with my we need to see, I managed until the end of the class before I suddenly thought I'm a TOEFL test operator. The TOEFL test raters, as they call them, raters who rate your exam, need to see that you've contributed to the discussion. They need to see that you have provided examples to support your point. They also really want to see your point of view. It's an opinion piece. Let it show your opinion. You don't have to state something like it's a scientific fact. List it as in, I believe electricity is the most significant thing that we've had developed. Although, yes, I'm like, when was electricity discovered? Just make sure the 200-year limit. No, we're within 200 years. But make sure you follow the criteria exactly. If they had said 50 years, 75 years, you really want to pick an invention or something that you know is within this time frame. Now, in this one, this is different from the last task. This one is going to take a careful look at the variety of the use of language. So they want to see different vocab, changing sentence structure. So maybe some sentences that have a clause with a comma, and then you finish. Maybe that you include a sentence. Maybe that you include a list, something that shows you can use different types of sentences, but also that it's done naturally and not done obviously, that you're just doing various sentence type. And then that language has to be correct. Grammar is correct and consistent. Word choice is correct and appropriate. Spelling, punctuation, capitalization are correct. These are the 3 grading criteria points for this second task. Relevant and clearly developed ideas, variety in use of language, and correct use of language. Here is our 5 out of 5 response. I'm rushing a little bit just because we only have 10 minutes left, but we're going to read this together. So this is a response for the exact question we've been addressing about inventions. For me, comma, which I love. I think this is a great way to start. Hint, hint, feel free to start yours with for me. It's a personal opinion piece. For me, the invention of the airplane by Brazilian inventor Santos Dumont is a good example of an important invention from the last 2 centuries. It made possible to connect different places, even if they are thousands of miles away from one another. People can be in any place of the world within 24 hours or less from the time they get inside an airplane. This is fantastic. Also, the world trade become more efficient. You can eat fresh lobsters from northeastern Brazil, even if you are in Dubai. I think that is really interesting. Since the ancient Greece, the man wanted to fly like the birds, and Mr. Dumont made it possible. And I am particularly proud of him because he was a Brazilian citizen, just like me. So that's my opinion. I could show you some of my admiration for this great man and his beautiful invention. What do we see? We see a variety of sentence structure. We have a sentence, this is fantastic. Okay, so that's an exclamatory sentence. We see in transition words, so that's my opinion. We see the use of you, the general you can eat fresh lobsters, okay? We have longer sentences with commas, we have shorter sentences, okay, good. We see generally correct use, but not perfect use of grammar. We have a problem with punctuation. There's no space after the period. For those of you who are really, I was going to say like grammar nerds, like I'm a grammar nerd, you might look at this and say, how did this get a 5 out of 5? The point of TOEFL is not to have perfect spelling and perfect grammar. They really want to see that you can write logically, that you can support what you say with examples. So of course, this guy knows the name of an inventor. Great. You don't need to know the name of the inventor. You just need to support your argument with logical examples. So the author says, we're going to talk about the airplane. And then he gives reasons why this is an important invention. Tell me, what are the 3 reasons he gives for why? What are the 3 reasons he gives for why? I'm waiting in the chat, guys. Give me at least one reason. What's one reason why the invention of the airplane is important for this author? Important to him. Hisham says it made it possible to connect. Beautiful. That was his first example. You can connect people in different places. And then he even gives like an example of this point. So he says it makes it possible. Well, he says it made possible. It made possible to connect different places. And then he says, you can be anywhere in the world within 24 hours. That's point number 1. What's point number 2? What is point number 2? The point number 1 is you connect people in different places. What is point number 2? I want you to be able not just to pull the main idea. I see main ideas. I want you to see almost like you're taking it into a skeleton. What are the bones? The bones of this paragraph is the main idea. The airplane is an important invention, and then we need the examples. So the first reason why is it connects people in different places. Point number 2, thank you, Hisham. Thank you, Sama. Thank you, Noor. Trade. The second example is trade. And we know it's a second example because we have a lovely transition word. Also, comma, also meaning a second point. Good. World trade. And then he gives us an example of that by talking about fresh lobsters. Cool. So he's giving us a supporting point and an example. Thank you very much. The third one, and this is where I want you to think about it being personal. The main point of his is not just that the invention of the airplane is important. It is important to him. What's the third reason that it is important to him or important in his opinion? Yeah, for me, the third point is that he feels proud because the inventor is Brazilian like him. You could argue, I would have accepted if someone wanted to say, Ariella, the part about ancient Greece, man wanted to fly like birds, Mr. Dumont made it possible. You could say it's a third point. For me, it's a little bit sort of flowery language to kind of prove the value of the invention. And I think the third point is really the personal part. And I want you to see that they are valuing personal opinion and personal perspective. So don't be afraid to put your personal connection into this written task. I also see someone saying, Sarah, noticing a passage that is full of mistakes worth the top mark is reassuring. Please be reassured. It is not an accuracy test when it comes to language use, grammar, capitalization. Yes, those things matter, but much more important is being able to show logically why you are saying what you are saying. Okay? Whew, this one I'm running late on. We only have a few more minutes, so we're just gonna go a little bit fast through the final slides. But I encourage, actually, let me go back to this. If anyone wants to send me a written response for my feedback, I can't promise it fast enough for you, Sarah, since you're taking the test tomorrow, but maybe within a week, if you send me an email, I'm going to put my email in the chat, americaninstitute.us. Send me an answer to this practice question. I can even go back to the page that has the prompt. Send me an answer. It's one paragraph and I will give you my thoughts. This is the prompt. You can take a screenshot of this if you like. What scientific discovery or tech invention from the last 200 years, other than computers and cell phones, would you choose as being important and why? I'm available. I'm welcoming anyone here who wants to send me something for me to review it for you. All right, now let's just wrap up with a few of our classic do's and don'ts. So ways to work on improving your writing score. Number one, practice paraphrasing. You want to be able to paraphrase, meaning repeat something that you've heard or you've read in different language. Right underneath practice paraphrasing, you'll see practice using synonyms. These are very similar ideas. You want to be able to state what someone said without repeating them. If you listen to the lecture and you have a great memory, and then you just write down a transcript of what they said, that doesn't demonstrate your writing skills and you won't get good points for it. You won't get top marks. Practice paraphrasing, practice using synonyms, listen to a story on the radio and write an article about it. That's paraphrasing. See what you remember and practice using your English to restate what someone said. Build your vocabulary. We have some sites, some resource sites on the last page that can help you do that. Practice identifying main points like we did together as a group about the reading passage. Read opinion articles in the New York Times, in the Washington Post, in the Boston Globe, in any English-speaking newspaper. Read an opinion article and practice writing if you agree or disagree in a one paragraph. And then why? It's not always going to be an agree-disagree like you just saw for this last task. It was about an invention and why, but still get yourself in the routine of defending what you say. And then last, practice developing supporting ideas. Exactly, the why, the supporting evidence. Common mistakes to avoid when you're writing. We have spelling mistakes, which is obvious. No one wants to have spelling mistakes, but don't forget to reread, proofread quickly as you can. Repeating vocab, repeating the same words, repeating the same concepts, all need to be avoided. In English, we like short sentences that have 1, maybe 2 points maximum, okay? So avoid long and complex sentences. And we like a very obvious and basic structure. Main idea followed by point 1, point 2, point 3. Don't get fancy on me. Don't give a supporting point, the main idea at the end. Maybe we see it in fiction books or novels or poetry, but in the TOEFL, keep it basic and clear. Here is the page for you to screenshot resources. Some of these, like Grammarly, are going to be ways for you to check your spelling, and others, like the Purdue Writing Lab, are areas where you can actually practice writing different types of articles or different types of responding to different prompts in English. Okay, so I hope you find some of these interesting. I hope that they help you with your TOEFL. For me, today's class went super fast, but I think it's because ultimately I love writing and I could talk about writing all day long. Thank you, thank you, thank you to everyone who sat through with me. I hope this was interesting. I wish you all the best, Sarah, on your TOEFL, and to anyone else who's taking it soon. But also don't forget, we have one more class. So if you missed one of the classes from the last 4, don't hesitate to come tomorrow. We'll be doing a recap. And if you didn't miss one, there's still going to be new material tomorrow where we talk about time management, we talk about IELTS versus TOEFL, we talk about everything related to procedures, how to sign up, how does the website work, all the little details we didn't get to in the last 5 days, we'll do tomorrow. So thank you everyone for coming. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I hope to see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Have a great night, everybody.